Hello, and welcome back to Alice Talks Football, and welcome back to what is a pretty juicy live show. There is talks and reports about Marcus Rashford being up for sale. Now, I will say I don't personally believe a lot of what comes out of Florian Plettenberg's mouth because he's the same journalist that has linked us to about 12 players in the last week, and I do think he's using United for clicks. But I do think that Ineos are ready to be brutal and put players up for sale. And Rashford could be on that list because we do have other information about Sandro Martinez being up for sale. Ratcliffe has rung up Berrada and said, you've got to be ruthless with these players. Apparently, more inside information saying that one of the reasons Ashworth was sacked is because he didn't sell enough players and that Jim Ratcliffe does not rate these Manchester United players. So while I'm sceptical about Florian Plettenberg and his credibility because I think he's just using United for clicks and a paycheck, I do, and the reason I believe that, because 3 months ago I would have said he was a good source of information, but he's linking us to somebody every day and we're getting linked to 12 names a week from him. So I just want to say, take him with a pinch of salt. But it links to other news stories we've got about Ineos ready to be ruthless. Man City could be in some serious trouble as well. There could be some big punishment for Man City. We've got more news about this Ashworth fallout, and it's to do with maybe Ratcliffe wanting more United players gone. Ratcliffe wants to be ruthless in his approach. It's pretty big, and we're going to dive into some transfer news, some other stories, and more. So guys, if you do enjoy today's video, please do go ahead and slap that like button. And I just want to say a big thanks to everybody that's been showing support to the channel, because today we hit 98.9 thousand subscribers this morning, and we're currently on 98,958 subscribers, so we might even hit 99k by the end of the day, which is crazy. So big up to everybody for showing support on the channel. Much appreciated, as we're so close to 100k, and you never know, I might hit it for Christmas. But yeah, I'm going to dive into the stories. I'm going to dive into news. But as if Ratcliffe and Brailsford are football geniuses, nothing more dangerous than those out of depth running the show. And I agree. I like that Ratcliffe is ruthless. I want a manager that's ruthless. An owner that's ruthless and not afraid to make big decisions. But there's a point where, is he too ruthless? Is he too emotional? When you are sacking 250 staff, when you wait 7 months for Ashworth to come in and sack him after 5 months, when you give a new contract out to this person and sack him and all his coaches after 2 months, for me, Ashworth was a football genius. He had a reputation of building structures at the club. Ashworth did not want Southgate. That's been debunked. Ashworth just wanted to be more patient with his approach, which Ratcliffe didn't like. And I get that, everybody at Ineos has got to be on the same page, but I don't want Ratcliffe and Brailsford running the show. I want Ratcliffe to be brutal. I want a lot of these players gone. But if Ratcliffe and Brailsford are running the show, it's no different to the Glazers running the show, because at the end of the day, they might think they are, but they're not footballing experts. Brailsford's a cycling guy. Omar Berrada can run the show. If Omar Berrada is allowed to run the show with Bivol and Wilcox, I've got no issue. But for me, that's true. I like it to be ruthless. We need to be ruthless. With 13th, we need to get rid of a lot of things, but you've also got to separate the emotion. When you're a United fan, we're emotional about it. You've got to bring the realisticness into it as well. So I agree with that. I like the ruthlessness. I think he needs to be ruthless, but there needs to be a bit of balance about it. You can't just buy this guy and then sack him a few months later. There's got to be thinking. There's got to be balance. There's got to be elements of patience. But you know what? I said, if he's going to be ruthless with the staff, he better be just as ruthless as the players. And that is what Jim Ratcliffe may be. Sir Jim was unhappy with Ashworth's assessment of players to keep and sell. He wants them to be hard on getting players out the door as quick as possible. He feels that they did not make enough effort during the summer to get rid of more than they could. So we're going to talk about some of the things that the United Muppeteers have come out and said. The first thing is they're saying that Sir Jim was unhappy with Ashworth's assessment of players, and he wanted him to be getting more players out the door. He wanted him to be more ruthless, and he wanted him to be harder with players. It was said that Sir Jim wants to see a bit more ruthlessness even in the academy, in the right way to sell products if they're not going to make it in the first team, but include buyback and sell on clauses. I agree with this. Now, I get annoyed with us selling some of our great academy products because I think we could have probably used them in the first team because they're shite. And I also think we sold them for so cheap. My problem with Man United selling academy products is you see, Chelsea sell Lewis Hall for a big fee. You see Manchester City sell James Trafford for 20 million quid. They got Paul Palmer had never scored a goal and they sold him for 40 million quid, which was an unbelievable business from Chelsea. But at the time, you were right to question it. Whereas United is selling a player for 1 million here, 2 million here. I'm more than open for us to sell youth players like Chelsea do, like City do, if we're actually going to get good money for them and put buyback and sell-on clauses in. Because as emotional and as biased as we will be to academy players, not all of them are going to make it. For example, we've got Shea Lacey, Ama Ibrahimovic, Bentito Mantato, Ethan Wheatley, Gabriel Bianchiri, Obi Martin, Saku Kone, Harry Amas, JC Fitzgerald, Dan Gore, which could all be incredible talents, and I could have named, Godwell as well. Could all be incredible talents, but maybe only 2 of those names would actually end up being good enough for United, and the other ones would just be good players that could be Premier League level. There's a difference about it. So I think you have to be ruthless in your selling and approach. And he said, he wants to sell players. He wants to sell players better, and he was frustrated that Ashworth didn't get as many players out the door. Ashworth in charge for a few months, hardly to blame for the years of struggle, seems like a blame game. And I'm going to agree with this. And people were getting annoyed at me for sticking up for Ashworth. The reason I stuck up for Dan Ashworth, and I said, look, maybe it was the right decision, because if they're on a different page, he wanted to keep Tenoghi, he wanted to be more patient. I can understand why Ineos got rid of him. But I don't think Ineos should get rid of him and blame him for everything that's gone wrong in the first 6 months. Dan Ashworth is someone that puts structures in place to make the club more stable in years to come. He has a long-term approach, whereas Ratcliffe wants change now. With Dan Ashworth, everything he does, you don't see it in his first year. You see it 3 years down the line, because he's changing the environment. He was bringing in psychologists. He was doing this. He was doing that. And it was a different approach. It was a less ruthless approach, but maybe it was a more smartly thought out approach, because I think Ratcliffe, being a United fan, has the emotion. He watches a game, sack the lot. You can't do that. We want to sack the lot, get rid of them all, get rid of them. We want to do that, but you can't. Do you know what I mean? And I think that right now, as PR, I think everything is being blamed on Ashworth. What I've heard from good sources of information was that there was a few arguments with Ratcliffe, Ashworth and co, because Ashworth had a more patient approach. Ashworth wanted to bring in data-driven approach, wanted to look things more rational, didn't want to bring in someone and sack them right away, whereas Ratcliffe was just fed up and emotional, get rid. That's my opinion. And I think, now they're trying to blame everything on Ashworth, but at the end of the day, you spent 3 million to bring Ashworth in. You gave him 6 months of gardening leave. He spent more time on gardening leave than he did in the bloody job. And I think now, because we've been a mess for 18 years, you can't expect Ashworth in 5 months to fix 18 years of mess. I think we need to be ruthless. I want changes, but you've also got to be realistic about the level of changes as well. You've got to be realistic about it, and I stick with that as well. He was very ruthless at Nice, and a lot of Nice fans weren't happy about that, because they ordered a little bit more patience. And for me, I wanted the full sale. I made it very clear throughout the reporting that I wanted the full sale. I didn't in particularly want Qatar, but I wanted the Glazers gone. And for me, the most important thing was getting the Glazers completely out of that club. So I wasn't the biggest supporter of Ineos, because I wanted the Glazers out. But then when Ineos came in and they got the job and they brought in Berrada right away, I said, you know what? I'm going to be fair. I'm going to give Ineos time. And for me, I'm not going to write off Ineos because they've made a few impatient decisions. I'm just saying, I have a few fears. But ultimately, I do think the club's in a better place under Ineos than it was under the Glazers, which isn't hard. And I can't judge Ineos till 2-3 years down the line, because it's going to take them 2-3 years to change 18 years of mess by the Glazers. I've tried to be quite lenient to Ineos because they did keep the Glazers here and patient with them. But I don't think you can expect, for me, and this is the way I think about it, I want Man United to be in a better place. I want more players gone. I want new players in. I want Man United to be in a better place. But when the club has been a mess for 18 years, you can't physically undo that in a matter of months. We have to be realistic on the time frame of the improvement. And I hate to say that, because I want United to be good now. But we can't just be good like now and flick a switch. I believe in Amarin. I believe if we get the recruitment right for Amarin, we will be a good side. Absolutely. So we need to do what we can in January and the summer to do, can we get Anthony out? Could we get some other players out? And Sir Jim is more determined, to be way more ruthless, and he wants to get things done quickly. We're going to get to a report where Jim Ratcliffe has actually rung up Omar Berrada and told him he needs to be ruthless and get players done. But Sir Jim is determined to be more ruthless. He wants to get things done quickly. He wants to fix Man United quickly. He's unhappy with Ashworth's assessments of players. He wants many players out of the door as quickly as possible. He's given Berrada, a strong role, and he's told Berrada, get players out the door. And some of the names that could be going out the door, I think, are quite surprising names, if I'm going to be totally honest as well. I'd rather get rid of the problem than let it fester. If Ashworth wasn't working, let him go. Same with the players, which is true. If Ashworth wasn't working and they felt that he wasn't going to work going forward, maybe it's the right decision. But I think personally, I would have liked to have given him time because he's a long-term appointment, not a short one. It's mental to think a director can massive impact and change in a couple of months. It takes time. Exactly. Maybe they weren't, willing of Ashworth of what they've seen in these months, but I don't think you can expect loads after a couple of months as well. Big up to everybody in the chat. Big up to Niall. We're going to talk about that in a sec. But there is talk of even players like, Lisandro Martinez being up for sale. Now, it is talk shite, but this has been said. Man United could be tempted to cash in on Lisandro Martinez if Real Madrid step up their interest in the defender. Martinez being trapped by the Spanish club, but is not considered off limits by United. On the ball, Lisandro Martinez, wow, excellent. The way Lisandro Martinez in these last 3 or 4 games under Amrin on the left-hand side of the defence has been on the ball is phenomenal. 10 out of 10 on the ball, Lisandro Martinez. 10 out of 10 on the ball. The way he was playing balls through, the way he was breaking the lines, what he was in build-up was absolutely excellent. The only problem with Lisandro Martinez is off the ball, the physical flooring. If he was a bit quicker, a bit stronger, and a bit taller, you've got an elite player there. I think on the ball, in Amron's system, you're not going to find many better centre-backs on the ball than Lisandro Martinez. But I feel off the ball, we are gettable in defence. We aren't good at defending large spaces. We aren't good at defending the wide channels. Now, I think if you pair Lisandro Martinez with someone like Lenny Yoro that's physically very good, it does help his chances. I think there's... For me, I do think we need a left centre-back. And that is because I assume that Luke Shaw isn't going to be part of the team going forward because he can't stay fit. And Lisandro Martinez had fitness issues. So I think we need a left centre-back. I like Lisandro Martinez. I wouldn't sell him. I don't think he's the problem. But I do think there's a lack of physical flooring, which needs to be improved upon. For me, I would sign a left wing back, number 1 priority. Kirkes, Alphonso Davies, Dorgu, Robinson, that's number 1 priority. I would then sign an athletic midfielder that's also technically good. If we're talking dream signing, Bruno Guimaraes, don't think that's going to happen. I like Belibra of Brighton. I like Stiller. There's a lot of players I like. And then I would sign an attacker. If we sell Rashford, the only man that replaces him for me is Kvaratskhelia. But I tell you this now, people will say Rafael Leao. Everything you don't like about Rashford is in Rafael Leao. I back Rashford, you know me. I like Marcus Rashford. I back him. Not been super impressed with him, but I still think he's one of the best players we've got in attack. I generally do. I think if you play him closer to goal, he scores. For me, Kvaratskhelia is the only one you can place Rashford with. I think Cunha as a left 10 could work well, especially with Mount being unpredictable. So, for me, Kvaratskhelia, Cunha, Bruno Guimaraes, Kirkes, and then a left centre-back. You've got Slotterbeck, you've got Lukabar to improve the physical flooring of the squad. You could even look at Hincapie. Very, very good options for United. That is what I would like in the summer, but that's not realistic. But yeah, the dream would be Bruno Guimaraes. He would be my dream signing for United. I think he'd be great because he could cover for Agate and cover for Maino because he's got the off-the-ball attributes of Agate, but the on-the-ball attributes of Maino. For me, you need cover for Agate suspension at some stage. Yeah, the problem is as soon as Agate is not in the midfield, there's no legs. Agate is key. Agate is one of the most important players because he's irreplaceable because there's nobody like him in the squad. And Casemiro and Maino lack the legs in midfield. Collier, you could argue, brings some of the legs, but that's a lot of pressure to put on him. For me, the irreplaceable players in the squad will be Agate, probably Højlund because I think he's the only person that can properly play striker in Amron's system. Xerxes can if he's got runners off him. Ahmad, Højlund maybe not. Maybe not Højlund. Ahmad, Agate, they're the 2 players that if we lose them, that we could that's a big blow. Euro, in terms of what he will bring, will be interesting. I think Euro is going to be some player. I think Lenny Euro is going to be an absolute top level player. Lenny Euro, Kobbie Mainoo to build around, absolute. So let's continue into more. I meant to put this on the slide before Martinez. I meant to report on this before the Martinez news, but let me read this out. This is what the Muppeteers had said about Ashworth. Ashworth was far too weak and indecisive. Ashworth continued to push for more time for Ten Hag. Ashworth was pushing him to stay. Ineos were unimpressed with Ashworth. Wilcox had been impressing Ineos. Dan Ashworth did not push for Southgate. I told you this. I'm going to tell you this for a fact. I got in touch with somebody. I can't reveal, but I got info from a very good source of information months ago, and this was, back in the summer. And at this point we knew Ten Hag was staying, but I said, "Tell me about the Southgate stuff," and he said, Dan Ashworth did not ask for Southgate once. David Brailsford did not ask for Southgate once, and I got that from someone that will know stuff. Like that was, so I knew from day dot that he never asked for Ashworth. Ashworth had never asked for Southgate, but what did the media do? Southgate, link Southgate to United. Why were the media linking Southgate to United? Because he worked with Ashworth before. They didn't have any information on who Ineos wanted for the next manager because Ineos were keeping it hush-hush from the media. The media need to get the Man United stories out for clicks, so they made it up. So as soon as Dan Ashworth was sacked, an hour after Dan Ashworth was sacked, they're saying it's because he wants Southgate. Do you think Man United are going to go to the media an hour after Dan Ashworth sacked and tell them it's because he wanted Southgate? No. The media were trying to think, why was Ashworth sacked? We'll cover our tracks from linking United to Southgate, so they made it up. So you now have got the Muppeteers, you've got Romano, and you've got The Athletic all confirming Ashworth never wanted Southgate. So we're going to clear that up because so much media has lied about that. Ashworth wasn't in favour of Amron as first choice, and Jim Ratcliffe did not like his assessment of the players to keep and sell. We know that information is true. It was also said he thought Ashworth wasn't ruthless enough, and Sir Jim wants the club to sell more players. So Sir Jim Ratcliffe was not happy at Ashworth not being ruthless enough. He obviously wanted Ashworth to sell more players in the summer, and he's obviously called on Berrada to now be ruthless and sell many players. It was also said that Amron was not unanimous first choice, but he was the top choice of Berrada, and Berrada stepped up and impressed Ineos. It was said that that was the moment that Ashworth was finished at the club, and United have not decided to sell Rashford. We're going to dive upon that in a second. If he does not improve, there could be a mutual agreement for him to go, and that United will be active in January. So the Muppeteers also added, Berrada's massively stepped up. Ashworth wasn't ruthless enough. Ashworth was finished at the club because of how Berrada stepped up. And United haven't decided to sell Rashford yet, but he could go in the summer, and that United will be active in January. So we're going to talk about United's plans for January in a second as well. We will talk about that in a second. But I'm just going to get through a few chats as well. Would you sign Son on a free? I like Son, and I think he could do all right under Amron. Maybe in January if you could get him on cheap. But I think Kvaratskhelia, I would go all out for him, but it'd be difficult to get him as well. So yeah, someone said, do you think we'll sell Diogo Dalot? I don't think so. I think he'll stay and be part of the plans. Sell Onana. Onana had a horrific game, but I think he's been our best player bar that game, or top 3 performers this season. So I'm not going to be reactionary to one game. For me, Ahmad Mazraoui and Onana have been our 3 best players this season. Onana just had a howler and letting it go as well. Someone said Rashford needs a fresh start. He has gone stale at United. He won't get any better staying at the club. And I fear you might be right. I don't think Rashford's a bad player. I think Rashford would leave Man United and play really well. And then a lot of people would be like, oh my God, why did we sell Rashford then? I think Rashford has had his confidence knocked by fans. I think that he's been sunk into this stale environment at United. And I think the problem with Rashford is a lot of it's in his head. I think ability-wise, we don't get much better than Rashford. I think Rashford is a better player than people think. And I think if he went to a club with the right environment and people around him, I think he would shine. And people won't like me for saying that, but I believe that. Agati is suspect and can't pass, and Euro got out jumped for the 3rd goal. I don't know what you're watching, but it's not the same as me. Facts, says Olmo. I mean, for me, there's no player at this club that's perfect. There's no player at this club that's absolutely perfect in 10-10. But you can look at the players at this club and say, right now, what Agati brings off the ball and out of possession is key. Yes, he has limitations in possession, but we signed him to be a DM, and we signed him because of what he did out of possession, because Mainoo's good in possession. You've got to understand that. There's limitations, but Amron is aware of that, and what he brings in terms of his legs, his intensity, what he does off the ball, we're a lot better when he's on the pitch. Lenny Yoro was fantastic in those 20 minutes versus Arsenal. I thought he was very solid in that Nottingham Forest game, and I felt that he, was not supported by those around him. I think he's good on the ball, I think he's good off the ball, and he's a 19-year-old kid, and he's not going to be 10-10 perfect. But from watching Agassi, watching Lenny Yoro, watching Mazraoui, watching Amad Diallo, watching Kobbie Mainoo, I believe those 5 players will be key to Manchester United's future. I personally believe that as well. But let's dive into things as well. Not every DM needs to be brilliant on the ball. Legs, tenacity, tackling add a lot that we lacked. When we lack so much off the ball, I think Man United bringing someone in with just any kind of ability on the ball was needed. And so when we lacked so much off the ball, the DM that we brought in wasn't about how good he was on the ball. It's about how good he was off the ball. It would be great to have a DM that was brilliant on the ball and brilliant at breaking the lines, a Super Mendes player. But our number one priority at Manchester United is on the ball. That is our number one off the ball. And our number one priority at United is off the ball, not on the ball. Off the ball, we are all for the midfield, and that's what we have to focus on. Completely misread that out. But let's talk about the Rashford news, and let's talk about a few other stories. So, according to Florian Plettenberg, Manchester United would sell Marcus Rashford at least by the summer and would already be open to top offers in the winter. The club acknowledged his development under Ruben Amorim, but consider him definitely not unsellable. One of the reasons why the sale was being discussed is if he were to leave the club due to this, his very high salary, it could free up critical points in the complemented financial fair play system, which in turn would give the club more room to maneuver in the transfer market. Now, Florian Plettenberg has been spouting a lot of crap about United. He's linked us to about 12 players in the last week, so I think his credibility is down the drain. I think he wants to write something about United every day because it's getting him clicks, it's bringing him money. But do I disagree with everything he's saying? No. I think Ineos, if Marcus Rashford does not step up between now and the end of the season, would say he's on 300 grand a week, he's an academy player, it's pure FFP profit. If we don't get Champions League next season, we're going to lose a lot of money in sponsors and revenue. If we want to spend big in the summer, he may need to go. If he does not perform, they will look at it and say, maybe he needs to go, he can bring us some money, he's going to get, 15 million a year off the wage bill. You get rid of Casemiro, you get rid of Marcus Rashford, and you get rid of Anthony, and that is 40 odd million saved just from wages on top of the fees that you get. And Rashford is pure FFP. So for me, I think Ineos will look at selling Rashford in the summer, but I don't think they've decided on anything yet. And I think that, as the Muppeteer said, I think it's under consideration for sure. But I think, they want to be ruthless, they want to sell players, but I think there's priorities right now, and my screen is frozen, guys. Oh, can you hear me? Can you see me? Sorry, the screen absolutely froze there. Sorry. I hope you can hear me and see me. But what I was saying is, right now, I don't think anybody's safe. I don't think anybody's safe at United, but I think there's priorities to who they want to sell. So I had a conversation with someone, and they said that there's already 5 players that Ineos have decided to sell. There's already 5 players that Ineos have said they're going. They're going. And that is Johnny Evans, Victor Lindelof, Eriksen, Anthony are the 4, and then they want to sell Casemiro as 5. They're the 5. Maguire number 6 as well. And then they're looking at Luke Shaw and they're looking at Malacia and the fitness issues. That's 7, 8. There's 8 players there that will be Ineos' priorities to offload. They will be Ineos' priorities. But then after that, they may look at a Marcus Rashford. They may look at a Diego Dalot. They may look at Alessandro Martin and say, they can bring us in a bit of money. Do we think they're good enough for Amorim's long-term project? Have they done enough since Amorim's come in? And they may look at that for some money as well. It would be a mistake to sell Rashford right now. The coaches need to sit down and have a conversation. Bruno definitely needs to go. We missed an opportunity to sell him in the summer. I disagree. I think Bruno's been really good lately. I think that Bruno's a more important player than he gets credit for. I think selling Bruno in the next 2 years is probably something we need to do because of age and because I don't think he fully fits Amorim's system. But if we're talking quality, when you've got players like Anthony and Lindelof in the squad and Eriksen and Casemiro that can't move. I like Casemiro. I think he's a good player. I just think he lacks the legs for Amorim ball. They need to go before Bruno. For me, I think Rashford is one of our better attackers. And there's attackers we need to get rid of before Rashford. But if Rashford doesn't perform with his wages, you have to look at it. Wanting to sell and be able to sell different things, we would have wanted to sell Maguire, Anthony, and Casemiro the past summer. Yeah, and talking of Ashworth, because Jim Ratcliffe was annoyed that Ashworth didn't sell these players, do you know what? Ashworth wanted to sell those players. Berrada wanted to sell those players. But when the previous regime, before Ineos came in, Anthony was at Ajax on 20 grand a week. Anthony was at Ajax on 20 grand a week, and John Murtagh offered him a 200 grand a week contract at United. Anthony's not even going to earn half of what he earns at United anywhere else. So, of course, Anthony didn't want to leave. Harry Maguire, again, 200 grand a week. Not, when he was going to move to West Ham, he refused. Maguire to West Ham was basically done in 2023, but Maguire said Man United have got to pay all his wages and he's got to be on the same wage, but he won't go. So when Maguire's on the wages he's on and Anthony's on the wages he's on and Casemiro's on 350 grand a week, and they know that they're not even going to get half of their current wages if they leave United, it was difficult for Ineos to sell them. And this is why I get Ratcliffe's frustration. We need to be ruthless in the summer. But this wasn't Ashworth's fault. This was Murtagh and Arnold's fault. Murtagh and Arnold decided to times Anthony's wages by 10 and give him 200 grand a week. Casemiro at age 30, give him a 5-year contract on 350 grand a week and decided to give Maguire over 200 grand a week. Ineos did not decide that. Dan Ashworth did not decide that. So when Dan Ashworth and Omar Berrada ran into trouble selling those 3 players, we can be like, oh, I can't believe they didn't sell him, blah, 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 blah. But as Alex said, when they're on the kind of money they're on, you can't sack Dan Ashworth and have a go at him for not selling those players when that is mission impossible. Because the only way we could have sold Maguire is a £15 million buyout, which means then we're only getting £15 million from Maguire rather than the 30 from West Ham. In summer 2023, we had to pay Maguire £15 million buyout, which meant all we'd get is £15 million from Maguire, and it was probably not worth selling him when you looked at the depth issues we had. To sell Anthony, someone's going to want to make a bid on him. He has criminal cases. I think that's been dropped now. He's been crap. He's on 200 grand a week. See, that is the problem that Ineos faced. Well, I couldn't fully blame Ineos for not selling those players because as much as we want them gone, it's not easy. Ineos haven't proven to be able to make difficult sales. We sold most of the players with decent interest in them. Yeah, we sold them for pittance, and that's the problem. Ineos do need to improve at selling, but at the end of the day, the problem was the people before Ineos that gave out those wages, not Ineos. So we can be frustrated with we can't sell this player, we can't sell that player. But think of the idiots that gave those wages and think, actually, the only way we're going to sell them is for absolute pennies because no one's going to want to pay their wages. Like that's the fact about it as well. Rip up the contracts, and someone said it costs us more to rip up the contracts. That's why it's not worth extending Maguire. Just let him go on a free or find a way to stay on another season. If Harry Maguire was guaranteed to stay fit and he said he would reduce his wages to stay at the club another year, I'd keep him on for depth reasons because we play free at the back and I think he could be a really good backup to the central centre-back role. But because of Maguire's injuries and because we don't know if he'd want to, for me, because of his wages, I think he'll have to go. If I could have Harry, I'm happy to have Maguire at the club for another year if he took a wage cut and would stay fit. I am. I think he's a good central centre-back. I think he's a good squad player. But on his wages, you want him to be starting. When you're on that kind of money, you want them to be starting. But I do actually think there's a decent player in Maguire. Continuing on, this was also said about Marcus Rashford. A move to Saudi Arabia for Rashford is an option, while a change of country and environment in France and PSG has also been mooted. Sources have said Rashford is dealing with a number of off-field issues and distractions that are affecting his performance. I've always said the problem for Rashford is it's in his head. If Marcus Rashford can sort out where his head's at, he'd be a better player for it. He really would. Because I think there's a good player there. Do I see him going to Saudi? No. Do I see him going to PSG? Possibly. Do you know where I see Rashford? Bayern Munich. I think Bayern Munich are going with Sane and Koeman sort of falling off a bit. Bayern Munich. Because I tell you this, my dream front three at United, if you said this to me a year ago, would have been Harry Kane, because if we've got Harry Kane instead of Højlund, Elise and Rashford. This was before Ammer, and this is when we were playing a 4-2-3-1 or 4-3-3. My dream at United would have been Elise right wing, Kane striker, Rashford left wing, because Kane would drop deep and facilitate Elise and Rashford. Had in 2023, instead of spending 85 million on Anthony, we'd actually put that money into Kane in 2023. Instead of spending 2022, Ten Hag's first summer, rather than spending 160 million on Anthony and Casemiro, if we'd have put that money into triggering Elise's £35 million release clause, buying in Kane, which would have been 100 million, but that's 135 million on Kane and Elise when you spend 160 million on Casemiro and Anthony. And then the extra 35 million, we went out there and we found a good DM. Maybe we got Gravenberch. Imagine if we'd have got Gravenberch instead of Casemiro. Imagine that summer, instead of Anthony Casemiro, that money went on Gravenberch, and he didn't leave Bayern. That money went on potentially, obviously, Kane and Elise. The following summer, we get another midfielder. It's all those small things in recruitment, but that would have been a dream to me. Because I think Rashford's first season was unreal under Ten Hag. If he had Kane to play with and Elise, I think it would have been a very good front three. But we can always dream of those kind of things. But Osimhen or Gyökeres, probably Gyökeres, to be honest. Osimhen is someone that scores a lot of goals with his head, and when Dalot can't find a player from his crosses, Osimhen's head can't run a mile to get the ball and back. So the reason I want Osimhen is, unless we've got good crossers of the ball, Osimhen's wasted. He's someone that gets on the end of crosses, and we don't have good crossers of the ball. Just the other story here. Sir Alex Ferguson has personally asked Omar Berrada to intervene to ensure Sir Matt Busby's family keep their places at Old Trafford after lack of communication from United over the summer. Really important that Sir Alex has done that. And one thing Ineos need to do is improve their communication. They need to improve their communication with staff. I'm all for being ruthless, but cancelling the Christmas party, lack of communication, kicking the women's team out of their facilities and everything. They've upset the women's team. They said, Ratcliffe basically said the women's team is, not his problem. What I have a problem with is you have to obviously be economically realistic. The priorities will be the men's team because it brings in the more money, of course, but it's about establishing a positive environment. If you create this negative environment in the women's team and this negative environment in the staff, it will leak into the men's team and the club will feel toxic and negative, and it will make it harder for us to succeed. So what I'm trying to say is they've sacked 250 staff, they've cancelled the Christmas parties, all for being ruthless. Ashworth sacked after 5 months, staff are feeling unsettled because of that, all for being ruthless. But just because the players are shy, it doesn't mean the staff can't enjoy a Christmas party. Because if the morale in the staff is bad and the staff aren't happy and it's toxic among the staff and the women's team is being completely treated badly by the club, which doesn't cost them a lot of money when you look at how much money the club generates, that will leak down into the men's team, that will leak down into the environment and the toxicity spreads. So they've got to be better. They've still got to be ruthless with players. I get that. But there's being ruthless and being arseholes. And they need to find that balance of, you've got to create a good culture. It might not be your priority, but let the staff have a Christmas party. Stop, chucking the women's team here and there and undermining the fact that they won the first ever trophy and cancelling their awards, but then not telling them and letting them find out big information on social media. You've got to be better with it because it will spread. It will spread. They fired Sir Alex. There's lack of communication with Busby. You can do things and say, well, cost cutting this, cost cutting that. But you've also got to look at it and say, well, we can't have a negative environment. We can't have a toxic environment as well. But yeah, I want to dive into another story here as well, actually. We've just got another update this second coming in on the Marcus Rashford situation. Again, Graham Bailey as a journalist, probably not the most reliable and wouldn't be shocked if he was just sort of jumping on the story because everybody else has been talking about it and making it up. But he said United sources deny they are looking to sell Marcus Rashford in January as he looks to impress Amarin. Like almost every player at the club, a good offer would be considered, but only Maino, Garnacho and Ahmad are considered unsellable. So to be fair, I think that he's probably right in this. I think that Rashford is untouchable in January. I think they have no interest in selling Rashford in January. I think they will make a decision on Rashford in the summer. I think Maino, Garnacho and Ahmad are the ones that are considered unsellable because of age. I think Højlund's another one because of age. He may not be unsellable, and obviously Lenny Euro. But Rashford obviously is sellable. If the right offer comes in, United will look at Rashford. They'll look at Dalot. They'll look at Lissandro Martinez. They'll look at Mason Mount. Players that could be key going forward. Players that you could get a bit of money for. They will look at those players as well. Sir Jim Ratcliffe thinks the women's team is scrappy, doesn't rate women's football. This is why he didn't care what happened to them. They don't bring in money for him. This explains his attitude. The thing is, I get the women's team don't bring in money and he's got to look at it from a financial perspective, but if it's more about creating the right environment. It's about creating the right environment. The women's team, it's not an economic priority, but women's football is growing. Women's football is getting bigger and bigger. There might be a point where actually having a good women's team in 20 years' time could be quite beneficial financially to the club. You just don't know with how the game is going. And also, if you upset the women's team, it's going to just spread to the men's team. It's the negativity as well. Someone said Xerxes Mount flops like the rest have seen enough. I mean, Xerxes and Mount could be sold in the summer. There's no one that has been seen as unsellable in the club. There are a lot of players that could be sold in the summer for sure. Guys, if you are enjoying today's video, please do go ahead and hit the like button. I'm going for 300 likes. And of course, you're welcome to subscribe down below if you're new. I'm 30 subscribers away from 99k. So you never know, I could hit 99,000 subscribers in the next 24 hours, which is absolutely mad. Because we're so close to the 100k mark. So big up everybody that has been showing support as well. But yeah, let's round up the news. Let's round up the stories. Let's get back into the information that we need to talk about. Let's get back on topic. So obviously we're looking at Kenda, but there's not loads in it for now. I think we were well good source of information. I'm sure we're looking at him, but I think it's one to talk about a little bit later down the line. In terms of giving you a recap of everything, Ratcliffe is unhappy. He didn't like that Ashworth wasn't brutal enough with selling players, and he wants players out the door. He wants multiple players gone. He's ready to be ruthless. He's called Berrada to be ruthless with sales, wants to get players out the door. They could look at even selling players like Lissandro Martinez. You know, they thought that Ashworth wasn't doing enough to get rid of players, and, you know, Ratcliffe is ruthless, and Berrada agrees with his ruthlessness to get players out. He doesn't rate the players. Rashford could be one looked upon in the summer for a sale as well, among many stories. And so we did talk about quite a bit as well. Some making it like the squad is full of bad apples, mostly young developing players. Some are not good enough. I agree. I don't think there's many bad apples in the squad. I just think there's players that are not physically good enough to play in the Premier League or play Ruben Amorim ball, so they need to be gone. I think there's players that just lack the quality, like Anthony, and are just not that good of a player. Anthony Lindelof lacked the quality. Casemiro and Eriksen just physically cooked. Do you know what I mean? There's players that are physically not good enough. There's players that lack the quality. And then there's players like Maino, Garnacho, Højlund, and Yoro that are developing. You know, we've got three sections of the squad. There's not a Man United player I look at and think, you're toxic. You're the problem. I don't think we've got toxic players. I think, as Alex said, there's so many young developing players that are raw. And when they're young, developing and raw, and they're thrown into this unstable environment, which has been Manchester United for the last 10 plus years, it's such an unstable environment. It's 10 times harder for a player to shine in an unstable environment. And when they do shine, like Marcus Rashford and Kobbie Mainoo, the minute they have 3-4 bad games in a row, they get kicked back down again and made to feel shite. You know, so we've got young developing players, just players like Anthony Lindelof, in my opinion, just aren't good enough. Players that could be good, Luke Shaw, Mason Mount, but can't stay fit. And obviously players that are physically cooked, Eriksen and Casemiro. So we've got a multitude of things, but I don't think it's bad apples. It's just quality, fitness, injuries, and many things as well. What's with the Xerxes hate? What happened to giving players time to settle, and also Berrada's 2 seasons to come good, or your gone policy? Absolutely agree with this comment by GBL. Spot on. If you know me, I've been protective of Xerxes. I think Xerxes, if he doesn't impress and Amorim doesn't see him fit for a system, could go. But I think you can't fully judge Xerxes until we've seen him, you know, into his second season, how he's doing. Because Xerxes was very good in his last start under Everton. He scored 2 goals. He was also very good in the Crystal Palace game. He was also very good in the Southampton game. Now, Erik ten Hag was using Xerxes the same way he'd use Højlund, the same way he'd use Sebastian Haller, which is not what Xerxes does. So, you know, why would you bring Xerxes if ten Hag was going to do that with him? Ruben Amorim has realised that Xerxes likes to drop deeper, get in the pockets more, and thrives with runners off him. Xerxes played 1 game in his preferred role, and Ruben Amorim profiled him perfectly, and he scored 2 goals and put in a fantastic performance outside of his goals. So I 100% agree. With Xerxes, maybe he's not good enough, but he's not been profiled correctly. He's, 22 years of age. He's been thrown into a new league, a new environment, a toxic squad. When players like Bruno Fernandes were not performing until ten Hag was sacked. We played, 9 Premier League games before ten Hag was sacked? Bruno Fernandes was not performing in any of the games until ten Hag was sacked. He started scoring under Ruben Nistelrooy. When a player that we know is good and a top-level player like Bruno Fernandes isn't performing in that environment, how can you expect new signings like Xerxes to come in and flow? It wasn't like everybody was really good. We were like Liverpool were top of the league, but Xerxes had just been crap. It was like, no, everybody's crap. For me, it was harsh. People judge Xerxes. Maybe he's not good enough. Maybe we'll sell him. But what I want you to remember when you judge players like Xerxes is he's been thrown into an unstable environment where a lot of our players that have performed in the past are not performing. He's been thrown into a new league, a new system, a new country. He's still very young. And on top of all of that, he was misprofiled. So you have to look at it like many things. And I think it's too early to judge. I think he just needs a bit of time. I'm willing to give Xerxes time. He may not be good enough. We may need to sell him. He's not a natural finisher. But time and patience, that's what we need. We need time, we need patience. That's what we need. It's frustrating because I don't like that Man United are shite. And I don't like that some of our players aren't performing. And I don't like that this player's been crap in this game. I want everyone to be good and I want it now. But it's a process. It's a long-term thing. We have to remember it's a long-term project. Anyway, big up everybody who tuned into today's live show. I think today has been a fantastic live show, so thank you everyone for tuning in. I will be back tomorrow morning with a 10-minute news roundup, so I'll do a 10-minute video tomorrow morning. If you are new and you're not aware of the channel, every morning on the channel normally I do something called a 10-minute news roundup, which is where I round up all the latest Manchester United news into a 10-minute video daily. And then in the evenings, I do live streams to discuss news that's come out later in the day. We might touch upon news discussed earlier as well if it's relevant, and just have a conversation with you guys and a chat and be interactive. And then, of course, if breaking news comes out like tonight or like when Ashworth was sat, there's always bonus content, particularly in the transfer window. So big up everyone for tuning in. See you next time. Bye.